Somewhere behind reinforced doors in a small town in eastern France sits one of the most heavily guarded engineering archives on the planet. It belongs to a company that has spent over 100 years convincing the world that only they can build, repair, or even touch what they create. That wall has just been breached, not by an engineer, not by a rival manufacturer, but by two guys with cameras, a private garage, and a wrecked hypercar that was never supposed to run again. What's happening right now to this car isn't just a repair story anymore. It's turning into a direct challenge to one of the most protected reputations in the automotive world. And the people responsible for guarding that reputation are watching every second of it unfold in real time. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand why a set of wider fenders on a broken supercar has become one of the tensest standoffs in modern car culture, and why the company at the center of it may not be able to stay quiet much longer. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to a crash in Miami that should have ended this car's story for good. A Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, one of only 60 ever produced and worth somewhere north of $6 million, was involved in a serious accident. The damage was extensive. The front structure was crushed, the airbags deployed, and major body panels were destroyed. Repair estimates soared past $1.5 million. Rather than greenlight that repair, the manufacturer made an unusual decision. They flagged the car's identification number across their entire parts network, effectively cutting it off from every official Bugatti channel on the planet. No dealership, no authorized supplier, nothing. As far as the company was concerned, this car was finished. That should have been the last anyone heard of it. Wrecked hypercars typically vanish quietly into private collections or get parted out, and the world moves on. But the car's owner wasn't ready to let it go, and when a well-known independent builder known for reviving cars manufacturers had already given up on got involved, everything changed. Instead of treating the car as scrap, this small team saw an opportunity nobody else had ever attempted with this platform. They decided to rebuild one of the rarest hypercars in existence completely outside the manufacturer's system, relying on 3D scanning, custom machining, and sheer persistence instead of factory support. What followed became one of the strangest showdowns in recent automotive history. With official parts completely unavailable, the team hit wall after wall. Components that should have taken days to source became nearly impossible to find. Structural elements needed careful fabrication. Engineers familiar with the platform warned that any shortcuts could be genuinely dangerous. Then, in a twist nobody expected, the head of the manufacturer himself began paying close attention. Not through a press office, not through lawyers, but personally. Addressing rumors directly, correcting inflated cost estimates that were circulating online, and even offering to have the car flown to the company's home factory for a proper repair. On paper, that sounded like generosity. In reality, it was the same enormous price tag wrapped in a more polite invitation, and the team turned it down. From there, the rebuild pressed forward against odds that seemed almost impossible. They separated the vehicle's modular chassis to reach a damaged transmission, a process the manufacturer's own leadership said should only be attempted in a couple of highly specialized facilities worldwide. They pulled it off in an ordinary private workshop. Along the way came a string of oddly satisfying discoveries. An unrelated economy car's airbags turned out to be a perfect fit. A length of standard hose solved a coolant line problem with no official replacement available, and the accelerator pedal on a multi-million-dollar hypercar turned out to be made of the same molded plastic you'd find in a budget commuter car. Small victories like these slowly chipped away at the idea that this project was doomed from the start. Then came the moment that changed the tone of the entire saga. When the engine roared back to life for the first time since the crash, it did more to legitimize the project than any statement or interview could have. Suddenly, people who had dismissed this as a hopeless vanity project had to reconsider. This wasn't just stubbornness. These builders genuinely knew what they were doing. Of course, the journey wasn't a straight line. There were false alarms, like a suspected crack that turned out to be nothing more than surface residue. And there were real mistakes too, including a moment where a sensitive fuel system sensor was nearly crushed during reassembly. A slip that could have undone months of progress in an instant. Every high and every stumble played out in front of an audience that had turned this rebuild into must-watch content, which brings us to now, and to the announcement that has generated more attention in a matter of days than almost anything else in this entire saga. The team isn't stopping at simply making the car drivable again. They're widening its body, flaring the fenders, and reshaping the silhouette of one of the most recognizable hypercars on Earth. This has never existed before, not from a licensed tuner, not from an aftermarket specialist, not even from the manufacturer's own customization division. If completed, this would be the very first wide-body version of this car to ever exist anywhere in the world. built entirely outside official channels on a chassis the manufacturer had already tried to declare beyond saving. This matters far more than the repair itself did. A repair, however controversial, can be framed as an act of preservation, saving something valuable from the scrapyard. A widebody conversion is different. It's a deliberate transformation, arguably a direct statement aimed at a company that has spent enormous effort trying to control exactly how its cars look, perform, and get modified. Widening a car built around a carbon fiber core and a massive quad-turbo engine isn't just cosmetic. Every added inch changes airflow, shifts suspension geometry, and alters how the whole platform behaves under extreme load. On an ordinary car, a widebody kit is mostly about appearance. On a machine engineered to remain stable at speeds most vehicles will never approach, it becomes an entirely different kind of technical challenge. One that would normally require months of wind tunnel testing, even with unlimited factory resources. There's also a deeper layer most casual viewers miss. This isn't a pristine car getting cosmetic upgrades. It's a vehicle that was already rebuilt from a violent crash using custom fabricated parts standing in for components the manufacturer refused to sell. Every one of those prior repairs now has to interact correctly with an entirely new body shape, stacking risk on top of risk, in a way a normal build never would. None of this is happening in a vacuum either. For a brand built almost entirely on the idea of untouchable precision and exclusivity, an independently built, radically modified version of their flagship hypercar is a genuine threat to the story they've spent generations crafting. Every time footage of this build spreads, it raises an uncomfortable question among the very wealthy clientele that brand depends on. If two independent builders in a private garage can pull off something this ambitious, what exactly justifies paying millions for factory exclusivity in the first place? That's likely why every escalation in this saga has been met with a response measured in days rather than months. Whether that's a locked VIN, a public statement, or an unusually generous-sounding factory invitation. Naturally, the audience watching all of this has split into two camps that show no sign of agreeing anytime soon. One side sees this as one of the great underdog stories in modern car culture, proof that skill and determination can outshine corporate gatekeeping. The other side sees a reckless gamble with a piece of engineering history, arguing that some modifications carry real safety implications that shouldn't be dismissed just because the underdogs are likable. Both arguments have real weight, which is exactly why this story refuses to quietly fade away. So where does this leave things? With a build that has already defied expectations at nearly every turn, a manufacturer that clearly cannot afford to ignore what's happening, and two builders who have made betting against them look like a losing strategy so far, every obstacle placed in front of this project has, strangely enough, ended up fueling it further, forcing sharper problem solving and pulling in an even larger audience. If that pattern continues, whatever response comes next from the manufacturer may end up doing the exact same thing, turning even more attention toward a project they'd probably prefer stayed out of the spotlight entirely. The real question now isn't whether this widebody Chiron gets finished, it's what happens the moment it does, and whether the company that once tried to write this car off completely will finally be forced into its most decisive move yet.